Well, hello and welcome to The Good Place. I'm Kim Tizer. Well, obviously, October is here, and with that means more things to spend money on, like costumes and bagged candy, as well as spooky outdoor decor like jack-o'-lanterns and life-sized skeletons. Yes, it is nearing Halloween, and for many Christians, the season causes us to ask, is this something I should celebrate? Is it harmless fun, or has it become something darker to be avoided? We're going to dig into those questions with someone who can offer both theological insight and a parent's perspective. Scott Richert is publisher for OSV, our Sunday Visitor, one of the largest Catholic publishers in the world, where he leads the company's consumer, parish, and curriculum publishing efforts. He's also the author of 2 books, many articles, and over 1,000 columns. He married his wife Amy in 1992 and is the proud father of 8 children and 1 grandchild. He joins us today to help us explore what history reveals and the church teaches about Halloween and how families can approach this season with both wisdom and, dare I say, joy. So, with that, welcome, Scott. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Kim.
This is going to be fun. Before we start, I have to tell you, I was doing a little research on your bio before having you on and discovered that you have your BA in political science from Michigan State University.
That's
And
correct.
would now be a bad time at the beginning of the interview to let you know that I have a daughter attending the University of Michigan? I mean, is that a
Eh,
bad thing?
There's never a good time to admit that you're related to somebody who's gone to U of M.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, I just had to toss that out there. All right. So, and you're from Michigan, right?
I'm originally from Michigan. Yes, from the west side of Michigan. Yep.
Okay, well, wonderful. It is a beautiful state. I'm happy to be here. All right. Well, just to get started, Scott, I'll let you know one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on to talk about Halloween is because years ago, when our children were little, and I wasn't Catholic at the time, I was a Christian, but not Catholic. And my kids were wanting to participate in Halloween. I really didn't know what to do with that. And I had friends that ran the gamut. And I'm sure you've heard of this as well. You had those on one end of the spectrum that just embraced it with gusto. And then you had those who hid in the basement with the lights out. They didn't want anyone coming to their house. And then there were some of those that I would say were in the middle that thought it was okay to embrace it a little bit so long as you had festivities held at a church and you changed the name and you called it a harvest fest or something like that and kids dressed as Bible characters. And so I'm hoping that throughout the course of our discussion, we will discover which of these approaches, if any, is correct. Um, and just to help parents and help those who might be watching. But before we figure that all that out, it's probably best to share for those watching who don't know what is Halloween and the origin of Halloween.
Well, I mean, it is surprising that even today there are people who don't understand where the word even comes from. So,
Hmm.
Halloween, of course, is short for the eve of All Hallows Day, which is the old English term for All Saints Day. And
Hmm.
so Halloween, the very name, has a reference to the feast day that is coming immediately after it. And for me, that obviously that shaped my approach to Halloween from a very young age, because I grew up as a Catholic. I grew up
Hmm.
in a town that, where on our street we had a few dozen Catholic children. We were actually the small Catholic family with just three kids, myself and my 2 sisters, but there were others with 8, 10, 12 kids. And so every year at Halloween, again, we're up in Michigan. It's It was before Congress changed daylight savings time to push the fall back out
Mhm.
past Halloween. So it was dark
Ooh.
when trick or treating started, and usually it was cold and blustery because again it's Michigan.
It's
Uh,
that way here right now, I just wanted to let you know, so kinda it's a nice setting for this conversation.
And so, every Halloween we'd get dressed up in our costumes. Everybody on the street, every light was on. We'd all get dressed up in our costumes, and then there'd be sleet or snow, and our mothers would take black plastic garbage bags and punch a hole in them and put them down over our costumes. So you had all these kids who dressed up in their costumes, and then ran out into the dark with black garbage bags over the top of them. And you think about that as a safety issue today. People would find this crazy, but we loved it. Everybody, running up and down the street, screaming trick or treat. And then we all went home, and at least in the early years, we didn't worry about razor blades and poisoned apples and all of that kind of thing.
Yes.
And then the next morning, we'd wake up, and all those Catholic kids who were trick or treating were going to All Saints Day Mass. And so for us, it was always connected. It was never in opposition to
Mhm.
the feast day that came after, or to the memorial that came after that of All Souls Day.
You understood the connection even as a young child.
Absolutely, and there are obviously a lot of cultural connections in Halloween. A lot of things that over time came in from different cultures, particularly from Ireland, from the British Isles. And things like our jack o' lanterns, etc., are part of that. But it wasn't until the mid 1980s, actually about the time that I graduated from high school, that we started to have this sort of moral panic over Halloween as potentially a pagan holiday.
So how
And
did that happen? Do you know? Because that's what I heard too as a very young adult that, "Oh, we shouldn't participate because it actually has pagan roots. It's a pagan holiday." And with the jack-o'-lanterns, I don't know, there was some I'm not gonna remember the story, but there was some connection with evil spirits being in the jack-o'-lantern. I don't remember, but I thought, "Well, is it Christian or is it not?" Which came first? I don't I'm no
yeah,
history buff.
it's interesting. I wrote a piece years ago for about.com, back when I was the Catholicism expert for about.com, tracing the development of this sort of moral panic over Halloween, and it really traces back to one man, Jack Chick, and you may
Oh, Chick
those
tracts.
tracks, yep, and
Yeah.
in my last years of trick or treating, actually, we did start. There were a few people who started dropping chick tracts into kids, plastic pumpkins or their pillowcase as we went around trick or treated. And so I actually had a little collection of these chick tracts. But you can it's fascinating to watch because you can go through the development in the chick tracts themselves of how Jack Chick was trying to tie Halloween into paganism, but he didn't start by saying pagans celebrated Halloween and the Catholic Church appropriated it. Instead, he went the other way because Jack Chick always believed that the Catholic Church was pagan because we quote worship saints, or Mary is actually a Middle Eastern goddess, that sort of thing. And
Mm,
so actually, as you look at the series of chick tracts that he developed on Halloween, he starts from the fact that Halloween was in fact a Catholic holiday tied to All Saints Day, and that was proof of its paganism. And then he works back
wow.
from there to the Druids, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but it had a strong cultural effect, and the
Definitely.
fact that it happened at the same time that some of the other things that I've already mentioned, like the razor blades and the idea that temporary tattoos might have LSD in them, at the
I
time
hadn't
that
heard that one.
oh yeah, at the time that those moral panics were also developing, this is coming in through Jack Chick, and it all comes together as a perfect storm. And what you
Mhm.
have is parents who are um, concerned, as they should be, for the safety of their children, and then they start going through their candy, but they're also starting to hear these ideas that maybe Halloween isn't as wholesome as they
Mhm.
remember when they were children, and that ends up building up into the situation where parents start to begin to doubt whether
Mhm.
they should, if they're good Christians, whether they should let their children participate in Halloween.
Well, 2 things here. First off, I'm gonna say I remember reading that article in about.com, and I wanted to thank you, Scott, for all of your past work in writing those articles because that was at the time during the time I was strongly looking at Catholicism, and I learned so much from you, and I just wanna take this moment to thank you for all your work, that you did with about.com and continue to do now through our Sunday Visitor, and we'll talk more, about that, a little bit later. So talking about parents being concerned, I think some rightfully so because I feel like Halloween was more innocent when we were younger. I mean, I remember wearing the simple little skeleton mask and or cutting holes out of a sheet to be a ghost but
Right.
now there's a lot of gore and it just seems a lot darker. First off, any thoughts on why that is? Is this just the way of the world? The world is more evil? I don't know. And what do you say to the parents who are fearful, I guess, to participate in any way or allow their children to in Halloween because of these other influences out there that seem somewhat sinister, if you will.
Yeah, it's certainly true that it has become darker in certain ways. It's become more adult in other ways. Actually,
Mhm,
in some ways, the adult portion came first. The sexy costumes and
mm, mhm,
adult Halloween parties and that sort of thing. And then you got more of the gore. And some of that gore again comes from popular culture. It comes from horror movies. Some of it, I think, comes from an even darker place. I think that there's actually some good to be found in at least some horror movies. That there is a very strong element of good and evil in horror movies. But more recent horror movies that are really focused on gore, um,
mhm,
something nihilistic. There's something deeper. There's something really nasty about that, and that too, I think, has crept into certain elements of people's celebration of Halloween. But that doesn't mean that Halloween itself is the problem. It's
mhm,
the deeper cultural problem that we have, particularly in the United States. Particularly, a fascination with violence, which we see all around us spilling over into our politics and not just our culture these days. And again, I think always that parents have the right and the duty to decide, what's appropriate for my children.
Were you and your wife, Amy, always on the same page even when your children were very little? Or did you
Yeah,
all have to okay, that's helpful, very helpful. Well, you were talking about the, horror movies earlier, and I thought it was interesting that you touched on that because I wanted to bring that up because just a couple of years ago, there was just like a slew of horror films that came out, but most were spiritual in nature. And while most people would say, "Oh, you shouldn't go see that, at least as a Christian, these are evil," there was a part of me that thought, "But is it all that bad if for some people watching it, maybe that is what wakes them up to the fact that there is a spiritual realm? And if they come to an understanding of, okay, yes, this is all about darkness, but if there is darkness, if there is such evil, there's got to be another force that is all good, you
yes,
know? So I don't know. Don't you think it could have that effect on some people who any other time of year may not give any thought to anything spiritual?
yes, absolutely. And William Peter Blatty, who wrote The Exorcist, you know, Blatty famously said that the reason that he wrote that novel and the reason that he wanted it made into a movie was precisely what you just said. That for him, the recognition that evil existed came first. He had been raised a Catholic, but had fallen away, and it was the recognition that there truly was evil in the world, and if there was evil like this, then maybe there was a God, and
Mm, mhm.
and that is what brought him back to church. And the movie itself, I think the movie is one of those good horror movies that when you are of an appropriate age to be able
I
to watch
still haven't watched it because I'm a chicken when it comes to movies like that.
that.
One
But
one of these days I'll watch it.
yeah, but the book is even better, and the book
Okay.
truly is a testament to Blatty's faith and to the way in which coming face to face with evil can, in fact, help us recognize that we can't overcome evil by ourselves, that
Mm.
we truly do need the help of Jesus Christ to
Oh, that's
overcome
good.
evil.
Do you know it's interesting? This was many, many years ago, probably nearly 20. I lived in Colorado at the time, which, in Colorado Springs, to be exact, home to Focus on the Family with Dr. James Dobson. I don't know if you're familiar with that organization or not, or with him, but I remember one morning driving into work and I was listening to the program, and it must have been nearing Halloween. And they had a guest on Focus on the Family. And I don't recall to this day who it was, but I know they were interviewing a pastor. And he said he came to put his faith in Christ, gave his life over to Christ while watching The Exorcist
Yes.
because it terrified him, the thought of going to hell, and it changed his life completely, turned it around. And so I figured everything belongs to God, right? He owns a cattle on a thousand hills. So he can use anything it's all within his power to reach people, to open up their eyes to him and to our Savior, Christ. So, um, yeah, it really speaks to just what you were saying. I'll never forget that story, even though, like I said, I forgot the person's name. And don't you think, too, what a great opportunity this time of year to broach those subjects that we often don't hear about and sadly don't even hear in our churches some and should be hearing, but that of judgment and of hell and obviously of heaven and all of these spiritual things. It seems like this would be a great opportunity. I don't know if you have thoughts on that or how parents can
Absolutely.
maybe use this time of year to dive into those topics.
Yeah, you don't hear a lot of talk today, even in Catholic churches, sadly, about the four last things, about death and judgment and
Yeah.
heaven. And I think we miss out on a great opportunity, when this time of year rolls around, because we talk about Holy Week and the Triduum, but I look at Halloween, All Saints Day, All Souls Day as a triduum of a different sort. That
Mm.
this is an opportunity for a deep meditation on those four last things, on
Oh,
hell, on Halloween, on heaven on All Saints Day, and on purgatory on All Souls Day, and taken together, the kind of encapsulates the Last Judgment. There is, and I may go a little far afield here,
it's
and
okay. Go for it, Scott.
but but uh, I'm sure that you have been, as I have been, to many funerals in Catholic churches where there's no mention of praying for the deceased, and there may even be mention, and sometimes even by the priest, of he's in heaven now.
Evan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
and I think that one of the things that we have fallen down on is that spiritual act of mercy of praying for the dead, because we don't like thinking about the possibility that someone leaves this life and um, still has some time to spend in purgatory to be cleansed in order to enter into heaven. And it's odd that we don't want to think about that, because one of my mentors, the conservative author Russell Kirk, um, Kirk was a convert to Catholicism, and one of the things that brought him to Catholicism was the doctrine of purgatory, and
Mm.
and that he always found it a comfort, because he knew that if he had to make it to heaven on his own, if he had to make it to heaven by the time he left this life, he probably wasn't going to.
Mm.
But anybody who ends up in purgatory, of course, is going to end up in heaven. That's what
Right.
the church teaches, and so we should embrace the doctrine of purgatory as something beautiful.
Right.
The reality that we have the opportunity to enter into heaven, to see God face to face, because we have an opportunity after this life to work through um, the rest of our temporal punishment, and aren't going to be condemned to hell, because we aren't perfect people by the time we take our last breath.
So beautifully said, Scott. It almost makes me think of back years ago. Again, this was before I was Catholic, but I had known a couple of people who were of the Southern Baptist tradition, which I was, who got baptized multiple times
Right.
because they felt like they weren't like it didn't take or it wasn't cleansed or they went through some struggle in life and they thought, I just need to get baptized again. And I feel like what they were looking for is what we receive in purgatory, that cleansing that we don't perfectly receive in this life because we struggle. I mean, we're sinners, right? So But we don't have to get baptized again and again. And thankfully, the Lord, and it is the Lord who instituted purgatory. I think when I understood that as a Protestant, that this is the Lord's way of completely cleansing us so we can stand blameless before God. This is kind of like that final step. And I see it as a beautiful thing and a welcoming thing for sure.
Absolutely. C.S. Lewis, who of course wasn't Catholic,
Mhm.
but did strongly believe that purgatory was a possibility.
Mhm.
Lewis said something to the effect that you know once we die, and we are able to experience God in a way that we can't experience while we're still in this life, that we would welcome that opportunity to have our souls cleansed until they are white as snow. Um,
Mm.
wouldn't want to enter into the presence, the full presence of God, with any kind of stain on our souls.
Mm. Amen. Beautifully put. Once again. Well, I find it interesting last night, not trying to not tw- not changing the subject, but just kind of veering off a little bit. I was just thinking about some of the imagery associated with Halloween, such as witches and
Right.
ghosts and skeletons, kind of who. And then it dawned on me, all three of those things are in the Bible.
Yes.
Whether you're talking about the Witch of Endor, in the Old Testament, or I think of the Valley of Dry Bones, those were skeletons all around that God brought to life, or um, even ghosts. I was reading now this one I don't think I was familiar with, but in the book of Job, one of Job's quote unquote friends saw a ghost. I think I wrote down this verse. Let me see if I can find it. Yes, this is in the book of Job, chapter 4, verse 15. It's Eliphaz. I had forgotten his name. Says, "A spirit glided past my face, and the hair on my body stood on end." So there's a verse there. And then, of course, in the New Testament, after Jesus' resurrection, the disciples thought they saw a ghost. So
Right.
they had, now I don't know what their thinking was on ghost, if their view of ghosts was the same as our view of ghosts, but I would think so. And when Jesus walked on the water, they were terrified. They thought they saw a ghost at that time. So I don't know. I just want to, because I know we don't have a lot of time left here. Um, but what are your thoughts on ghosts? And I want to know if you've ever seen one.
Have I ever seen a ghost?
Do you
Actually,
think so?
it's a good question. And there's um, there's an idea,
Okay.
which, not something that the church teaches necessarily, but that ghosts do manifest themselves in dreams,
Mm.
and I have certainly seen dead relatives and friends in dreams, and when I have seen them, um, the experience has been one of great comfort,
Mhm.
in a way that's very different from just seeing other people in my dreams. So I'll leave that at that. But in terms of what a ghost is, what we do have a traditional understanding in Catholicism that ghosts are in fact those souls in purgatory.
Purgatory. Okay.
That they're different from, say, apparitions of saints, who are in heaven and appearing to people on earth, but they are those souls in purgatory, and that their appearances may actually have something to do with their with their cleansing in their time in purgatory. The church does not. This isn't something that you're going to find outlined in great detail in the Catechism, but it is the traditional understanding of what a ghost is. What a ghost is not is something evil. And that's where again a lot of modern horror kind of mixes this up, and so you have characters in horror movies that are supposedly ghosts and are doing evil things,
Mhm.
but spirits that are doing evil things are demons. They aren't ghosts as the church understands. They aren't souls in purgatory. They are demons, even if they're manifesting as humans. In a human form. I think it's always important to make those kinds of distinctions, and to understand that that when a human being dies and his soul either goes to hell or goes to heaven or goes to heaven by way of purgatory, that we don't become an angel, we don't become a demon.
Mhm.
Angels and demons are the same type, but they've gone off in different directions, and demonic activity and what we call ghosts are completely different spiritual beings.
So if a ghost, someone, I guess, would you say a disembodied spirit? I don't like from purgatory makes him or herself known to someone, would the primary point of that just be to pray for them? I mean, are there any instances that we know of where they've spoken, someone has heard them speak and they've been given a mission from someone in purgatory?
The most common thing down through centuries when we have documented instances of often actually it's in the writing of saints who say that they have seen the soul of someone who's passed. The most common thing that person is saying to them is pray for me.
Mhm. Okay.
And that's part of the reason again why the church has traditionally seen um, these what we call ghosts as souls in purgatory.
Are there any books, I hate to put you on the spot, but any books that you recommend, whether about Halloween or All Saints Day, All Souls Day, Purgatory? Are there some books that you would recommend to someone watching who wants to learn more?
Oh, there are many books.
Should they
Uh,
just research it online, Google it?
Yeah, I think that picking up devotionals on prayers for the souls in purgatory is a great place to start. I really, again, I can't stress enough the fact that I think that the church does not speak enough about the need to pray for the dead. And so, OSV publishes a number of these devotionals, written, most of them that we publish were written by Susan Tassoni. And if you go to osvbooks.com, you can find devotionals on for the souls in purgatory there. I do think that a good way to really get a better sense of the depths of good and evil in the world is often through fiction, and
Hmm.
who can stomach it. I do recommend reading The Exorcist. I've always been very, very impressed with Blatty's uh, the depth of um, spiritual knowledge that he is able to weave into the story. I think in general that fiction is a better way to get across spiritual realities than more academic tomes.
I find that interesting. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm looking because I'm at a loss for the name of this very famous author who is Catholic, writes very terrifying fiction, and I can't think of his name all of a sudden. Sorry, I'm so slow, and I'm doing this with my left hand, one finger here. Horror, we'll say novels. He's like on the same level as Stephen King.
Oh,
Uh,
Koontz.
yes, Dean Koontz. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
And I read an interview with him once, and he talked about how he always includes the battle of good versus evil in his books, and good always wins. Like,
Yes.
that's a very important theme throughout
Right.
all of his books.
Yes.
But I don't know if I recommend him. Like, if you live alone
Yeah.
and get easily startled, I would not recommend any of his books. One called Intensity, if you've never read it, it was the scariest thing I've ever read, and for years, I had these images in my mind from that book because it's so powerful when you read, the images you come up with. But, he's a very devout Catholic from what I understand. Of course, that was
Yeah.
years ago I read about him.
Yeah. And if you read any of his biography, his background, he had a very, very rough childhood,
Oh,
and
I didn't know that.
again, his like Blatty, he comes to the reality of good through the experience of evil,
Very
and
fascinating.
then he in his fiction, that's what he's trying to do is to pull you through that experience, that sort of harrowing experience, so that when you come out on the other side, you have a desire for good. You have a desire to embrace the good.
Well, Scott, this has been such a great conversation. I thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, sharing your insights. Where can people find you? I know you work for Our Sunday Visitor, as we mentioned early on, but if people wanted to reach out to you or know more about what OSV publishes, how can they find you? Or should
Well,
they not look for you? Should
yeah.
they be like, don't look for me?
So we've got a couple of different places on the web. Our sundayvisitor.com, osvnews.com, which is our news service that we started when the bishops closed down the domestic arm of Catholic News Service. And I write columns for OSV News that are syndicated to diocesan newspapers and other Catholic sites. I also have a personal website called countermarch.org, and that's a place where I've collected many of my articles from over the years, from Chronicles Magazine, from About.com, from Our Sunday Visitor, from any number of places that I've written over the years. And there's a contact form on that site if anybody does want to reach out to me specifically. So.
And is there any particular project that you're working on right now that you wouldn't mind sharing with folks?
Well, yeah. I mean, we always have a lot going on. There are some exciting things that we'll be announcing in a couple of weeks at the bishops' meeting in Baltimore for
Okay.
OS news, and so keep an eye out on that. Of course, we've got a wonderful series of books coming up. next year for OSV Books. And if you go to osvbooks.com, you can find all of our backlist of books and announcements of new ones.
All right, Scott Richert, thank you so much for being on The Good Place. I so enjoyed this, and I hope you'll consider coming back.
I would be delighted to do so.
Thank you. Have a blessed Halloween coming up.
Thank you. You too, Kim.
Well, as we've heard, Halloween isn't something for Christians to fear, but it's worth approaching with intention. Whether you join in the fun, focus on the saints, or spend the day in prayer, keep Christ at the center of it all. If this conversation helped you, please give it a like, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more meaningful reflections. I'm Kim Tizer, and you have a blessed Halloween as well. Bye.